Hey everyone, and welcome to the Dev Dump, perhaps the #1 podcast for indie game development and other trash like that. Whether you're new to game dev or just love gaming, you're in the right place. I'm Barji, and I'm joined by my boys, PolyMars, Reece Geofroy, and Goodgis. Anyway,
hey, what's up,
guys?
What's up, guys?
How's everybody doing?
Quick, I just want to give a shout out to all the love we got in the last podcast. It was fantastic. You guys were amazing. I can't believe how many all the comments, like literally within seconds of us posting it. So we really appreciate it, and we're glad that you enjoyed us rambling.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That was really cool.
Definitely. We were talking beforehand about like how well we thought it would do, and I don't think any of us predicted that it would do this well. So
no.
Yeah, we were there like, oh yeah, 200 views,
maybe like 100 subs.
Yeah,
wait, people actually are watching our podcast?
Yeah, so I've actually been recording our conversations, Jake, about like, you know, the one we had last Thursday. I just recorded it and uploaded it.
Yo, and people watched it.
People watched
No
it.
way.
People watched it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
So what are we talking about today,
thanks,
boys?
guys. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
I've got a question for you boys. Today's
What's
podcast
What is
is
it?
going to be themed all around art. So my question for you guys is, how did you develop your art styles? Let's start with Reece this time. Tell us, Reece.
Oh God.
Where did it all begin?
Okay. Me personally, if you guys do not know who I am, I do a lot of pixel art stuff. So I guess my main art style is pixel art, as you can see from my profile picture. I think that for me personally, obviously, I mean, I think in pixel art in general, it's usually just self-taught because I don't think anybody's gonna teach pixel art in a university. But yeah, so a lot of mine was just YouTube tutorials and trying to figure out like how to make my style. Well, at first it was trying to figure out how to actually do pixel art, but once I actually like developed that skill enough that I could understand it to a point, it was mainly just about figuring out like how I can make my style different. So how did I do that? I don't really know how to explain that into words, but I think it's just about, I explained it earlier in my live stream today. And I think it's about just figuring out how to do certain different like textures and materials, you know, like glass and wood and stuff like that. And then you can just apply these rules, these like set restrictions that you put on yourself to kind of create your own art style that will, you know, be cohesive throughout multiple things. So for me, I guess, like, how did I learn it? It was just from tutorials.
Did you start with pixel art, or did you have like did you make games with like other art styles beforehand, or was like pixel art the first one you went into?
No, I mean it was pretty just, you know, just pixel art right away.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people
find that,
start with pixel art.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What kind of people
and it just
did
kind of
you
stuck
like?
for me, for sure.
Yeah. What kind of people did you take like inspiration from?
Honestly, Heartbeast was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
He
Oh,
was
yeah.
like somebody that kind of got me into game dev as a whole. I think like I found a video and it just kind of stuck with me. It was just like him making this small game. I've mentioned it in a video before, and Ben, if you're watching this, I haven't talked to you in a while, but I do apologize. But it was just a very simple game, and I thought like game's like not that. Like I think I can do something like this. Not to like downplay his work, but it was just in this way of like it was like one of his simpler games. I didn't know what like game jams were at the time, right? So I thought this was something he made in like 6 months, but realistically it was just like 2 days. But yeah, and I started watching his videos. He had pixel art stuff, so started looking at that. And
Yeah, I mean,
Sweet.
I definitely think pixel art's like the easiest way to get into it. Like if you have like not very much programming knowledge and you kind of want to make your game look good, whatever, like you're starting out, pixel art's definitely one of the best ones to go for, just because you
Yeah, I feel like pixel art's really accessible. Same with like low poly 3D graphics, and that's why those are like super popular with indie games.
yeah, it's like sorry,
yeah,
Goodgis,
for
go
sure.
on.
Pixel art is painting, but it's a lot easier than painting because you're just using little blocks.
Yeah.
I find that most people that get into game dev do pixel art because it's easy. Like even example like Dewdrop Dynasty art style is like stupidly easy. Like anyone could do something like that simple.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to make a game that looks cool. that's stylized, but also isn't like you're not painting all the time or doing insane illustrations.
I think it's easy to look professional. It's easy to look polished, because there's like set, blocks that you're placing down. You can't mess up on, having an improper stroke, right? So I think that it's easy to get into. It's definitely something, any art style is going to have a learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still learning things every day, but I think it's a good art style for getting clean, professional looking.
Yeah, it's kind of like
without a
sculpting
lot of
where
work.
things are like more like clean and like more deliberate, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely scalable as well though, because you can have like very complex pixel art. Like it's not limited by the fact that it's easy to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious, because we all do very different, art styles. I'm curious, like PolyMars, how did you develop yours? You have like a very, I can't even describe it. All your like your colors remind me of a coffee shop, and it's funny because your latest video has like coffee in it. But yeah, could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so we were talking about inspiration earlier, and like Reece with Heartbeast, that was basically me with Black Thorn Prod. He's why I started making games. I just saw his like games, his like simpler games. I'm like, wow, I think I could do that. So for me, it was actually a Black Thorn Prod tutorial. It was something like drawing 2D game characters in Photoshop. And basically, I was just trying to copy him. And at first, I used like a drawing tablet and tried to like freehand like he did. But I realized I was pretty bad at like freehanding. So I started just making these like shapes, like circles and squares mainly. And I still followed his tutorial for stuff like shadows and outlines. And then that kind of just developed into whatever my art style is.
It's interesting because maybe this is subconscious, but I definitely see some like Club Penguin influence in your artwork as well, and I love it.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
That's probably subconsciously, like I've never thought of that, but I wouldn't be surprised considering that's like the only game I've ever played as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty banger game. So
I mean, it's the only game that you honestly should play.
It's the only game you need, really. That's why my first video is literally like remaking a Club Penguin game.
Yeah, kind of thinking about it though, a lot of the games you've made since though have been they could have fit in as Club Penguin mini games, like Cursor Custodian.
That's true.
For you guys who don't know what that is,
all of my games are mini games.
Yeah, for you guys that don't know what that is, it's basically like the player like runs away from a cursor kind of to the right hand side of the screen, and it's scrolling, so you have to jump over these gaps. Like that could fit in as a Club Penguin mini game.
Yeah, that game was actually inspired by a Club Penguin mini game. I talked about that in my video on it. It was the Puffle Roundup game where the Puffles move away from your cursor.
yeah. Damn.
Dude, Club Penguin has influenced me
you need to make
in too many ways.
Club PolyMars, make it happen.
Yo. that could be my like dream game.
Bro, you could have like the different planets as like you could have the they're all just walking around.
This is yo scope creep.
You could get like little asteroids instead of puffles. Holy crap.
If like you were to do like an academic analysis of all my games, I'm sure you could find so many like weird references to Club Penguin that even I don't even know about.
Yeah, it's definitely subliminal, but I like it. It has that, like I said, it has that coffee shop vibe to it, like just your colors and stuff like that. And I think it's cool because now that you mentioned like Blackthorn Prod, like I could see some of the inspiration, but yeah, I definitely see like more outside inspiration from other things. And
yeah, it's like
Club Penguin was
but different. It's weird. Yeah.
It's definitely developed into its own style for sure. Yeah. It's more simplistic.
Yeah, it's like definitely
nice art style,
probably like worse too. It's more like rigid, I guess.
So
Jack, what about you, Barji?
What's going on, man? Be modeling. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, anything 2D, I can't really do. Like, if you've seen any of my 2D games, it's pretty much just basic shapes and tons of post processing. Like, when I'm making a game, like I want it to be as minimalistic as possible, but even that is just terrible. And so, like, I obviously made a lot of 2D games before I made any 3D games, and I really struggled to kind of find what art style I wanted to use, like whether it be pixel art. But I think it comes down to that I just didn't enjoy it. Like, I don't enjoy sitting there and making 2D art. I don't know what it is, but then with 3D, I feel like for me at least, 3D is much easier than 2D, right? Because with 2D, you're almost trying to fake a 3D perspective in a lot of ways. Like in certain types of pixel art or whatever, you've got to angle the character so that, You know, they've kind of got depth. Whereas with 3D,
Yeah, you have to draw depth.
yeah, but with I can never do that. Like, I can't do that. But with 3D, it's kind of like you don't have to fake it. You can move the camera around and you can move things. And although my 3D models aren't the greatest, like, I definitely think there's like a charm to it, to keeping things simple. I guess I don't really know. Yeah,
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense because, like, think about it. Like in 2D, you're trying to mimic something like a silhouette of something. Let's say like a toilet seat, and that's hard to do because you only have one perspective to do it from. But in 3D, even if it's kind of rustic looking or it's like low poly, if you see it from enough angles, you're like, that's clearly a toilet. Like, so it's easier to make stuff come across as, you know, what it actually is because you have 3 dimensions.
Yeah. Because really, everything
Jack,
you're
like,
drawing
how-
is based off of like something that in real life is 3D.
yeah.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
Jack, how did you actually develop the art style then? You know?
What, like my low poly kind of?
Yeah. 3D.
Well, I think mainly it's just I don't really know much Blender. It's more just smacking a load of primitive shapes together to try and build something, right? Like, I don't do any sculpting or anything. There's not many curves in the things that I make. It's literally a case of just getting cubes and cylinders and stuff and trying to put them in a way that it looks nice. And I've actually found that the more detailed I try and make things, the worse it looks. So keeping like the vertex count low is like nice. And I think just when making games, if I was like, oh, I need a bridge, I'd be like, oh, I could probably make a bridge. So it's literally a case of I needed models when I needed models, and just over time, I guess I've made so many that I can have a good crack at most things, but it's still not where I'd like it to be. There's a lot of Blender I'd like to learn.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think we're all are from, you know,
I think
what we're doing.
I have a long way to go too.
So, Mark, you're actually an interesting one because I think you have 2 very different art styles. So, I guess we already touched on, you know, the pixel art for quite a while, which, you know, Goodgis does a lot of pixel art games, if you guys don't know, but he's also a professional graphic designer. So I think you have the most interesting story, you know, where you actually have a background in what you're doing, unlike us. We're just kind of fumbling around, trying to figure it out. So, like, I think you know, it'd be nice to hear your perspective on your more like simplistic. What do you even call that? Like corporate style?
Yeah,
What do you
it really
call
is a
that?
corporate style. Yeah, for those who haven't seen it, my stuff is like, I guess the best example of some recent work was the Great Spring Game Jam that was on itch.io. I did the artwork of like the flowers and stuff. It's weird because I started off learning pixel art when I was a kid, and I didn't have YouTubers to kind of like look at. I just like kind of based it off of like old video games. And there was a guy on Yo-Yo Games Sandbox back in the day. When
I used to love that
could,
website.
Yeah, I used to upload, you know, games on there. There's a guy called Banoff G, and he actually ended up becoming a successful developer. He ended up making a Wander Song, I think. But I remember that was like the guy, like he was kind of a rival. He wasn't really a rival. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but like in my mind, he was like, oh, I gotta surpass this guy. You know, I was definitely competitive. And then, you know, I grew up and I was like, I should probably get a job. And I liked making art, and I found that I'd make fake businesses just so I could create the branding for it. I'm like, that's a pretty good sign that you want to be a designer. So yeah, I think, you know, I went to school, and even before school, I was doing freelance, and I specialize in illustration, and I use 2 different styles. I use like a mono weight outline style. It's almost like tattoo art in a sense. It looks nothing like tattoo art. That's kind of confusing, but I have that style, and then I have more like really geometric. That's like the best way you can describe it. My stuff is so geometric. I love the idea that you can make something perfect. Like going back to what you're saying, Reece, with pixel art, when you're like illustrating in vector, you can literally snap everything. You can do the math perfectly, so you create a perfect piece of artwork. You can pixel grid it. You can do everything. So that's primarily what I work in. And it turns out that ended up influencing my pixel art style. And now I have like those 2 styles in vector kind of have become this like my new pixel art style, which is cool. So I think it takes time, and I think you look around, you see things that inspire you, and you steal them. You're like, hey, I like how this person uses colors. I love geometry, so I'm like, I'm gonna take that. I love bright colors and like really like trendy colors, so I just study on a weekly basis. I look through art boards. I look for reference, and I just find beautiful colors, and I save them. But and over time, you know your art style is basically it's your personality. It's who you are. It's like your interpretation of life, kind of. So it
Yeah.
just naturally develops the more you kind of do it. So
Yeah, that's
Fair.
definitely interesting. Um,
That's solid.
I guess the
What's
two
that
most
say?
comparable people here are Reece and Mark. Like, where do you guys feel like you've differed? Because obviously, Reece, you've gone and learned the stuff yourself, whereas Mark's gone and like actually got a formal education for it, right? But obviously,
Yeah.
you've both got your own distinct styles. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, Reece, do you wish you'd have gone to do like what Mark did? And Mark, do you feel like it was worth it? I guess start with Reece.
Okay. I actually, I'm cool, like, with how things are right now. I don't think that going to school would be a bad thing.
Yeah.
I guess I can just briefly touch on it, but I was in school recently and in software development, and I was just so driven to make this thing happen. Make my dreams
Yeah.
a reality that I stopped focusing. I was doing really well in my classes, but it got to exam time, and I had to sacrifice. Couldn't post anymore on YouTube. I couldn't do any game dev. I just got really depressed, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I made that leap and I actually left school, which maybe isn't the best decision, but it ended up working out in the end. I'm good now and things are working out. But like, I think that just me learning everything that I've learned through whatever means that is, if that's YouTube videos or random blog posts that I found, it's all me. It's all, stuff that I've found through
Yeah.
myself. And so no, I wouldn't go back and change that because I'm pretty happy with like my art style and how it developed, and definitely took a lot longer. I think that school is very good for teaching you like structure and deadlines and stuff like that. But I mean, I wouldn't take it back.
No.
yeah, I mean,
I've actually been. Oh wait, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so I've actually been thinking about that a lot too, like school and like, because right now I'm in my last year of high school, and I feel like I can either focus on school or I can focus on like my YouTube. Like, I can't do both at the same time. Like, I'll either go a while without uploading, or like right now I've been focusing on my channel. I haven't been like doing my homework, but anyway, so yeah, I definitely relate to that. Like, I could either go to school, I could try to get a job at like some like tech company, or I could keep making YouTube videos. And I still don't really know the answer yet, so that's cool to see your perspective on that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really
I think. Sorry, just real quick. I think that education's always important. I'm going to like tech schools and stuff on the side. It's all self-paced, so I can do it at my own leisure and whatever.
Mhm.
For the people watching, I don't want to encourage people to just like not get educated in something, right? But at the same time, for me, at least like my mindset going into it while I was in college, was like, for me, it was just a lot. So I felt like I could either start my dream now, or I could like kind of stick my head in the mud and out these next 3 or 4 years and then try what I'm doing now. Because at the end of the day, for me, like, I was just so driven of like, this is what I want to do, that either way, career, like, whether I had a paper to say that I can do this thing or not, it was like, this is what I want to do. Is
Yeah.
like, just, do my own thing and be self-employed. So for my specific circumstance, I felt like dropping out was the right call for me, and then figure out school later. But I think everybody's journey's a little bit different. So
Yeah, I
anyway.
get that. I'll have to see what happens next year.
I honestly think, I mean, that's a
Sure.
good point. I think I think a formal education is good for a couple things. Like if you need a job that requires a degree, like you want to be a doctor, you need a doctorate. Like it's simple as that. Like
Yeah, yeah.
but for something like graphic design or anything with art, yes, you can get teachers, you can go through all this stuff. But you don't have to. I know, my cousin is a graphic designer and he never went to school and he's doing full-time graphic design. He loves it and he's like traveling all over. And it all comes down to the type of person you are. If you're not a driven person, if you just want to get a paycheck and play games, not have to worry about like hunting all the time, hunting for your next source of your meal, if you're not interested in doing that, then going that route isn't going to school is going to guarantee that you're going to get a job. And even then it doesn't. Like I know people I went to school with that didn't get a job. And honestly, the reason I did well in school is because I was too busy goofing off and they were okay with it. Like I was doing my own projects. I made a board game and I sold it for school and they let me do it for some of my classes. So like and to be honest, like I wouldn't be able to work at my job, which right now is awesome, if it weren't for my degree. Like they just would not hire me. And that enables me to do both these things. So I think everyone's journey is different, like you said. And I think school does force you to learn things that you don't want to learn about, which is also good. But also like it's the same thing. You can do it. I learned so much before school. So school was kind of like me just redoing the stuff I already did. But if you want to be a designer and you want to get a job, or if you want to be like a computer engineer, go into computer science and you want to get an actual job, and you probably should get a degree. That's my recommendation. But if you're pursuing your dream, then don't and that's what you want, then don't even waste time. Like I think you're absolutely right for dropping out and pursuing your dream, because you don't want to spend the next 10 years of your life working towards something that you don't really want. That doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, everyone who's watching this, drop out of school.
Yeah, honestly.
no, school is cool.
Okay, but anyway, like back
School
to
is cool.
art. I think something interesting is how, like you were saying, Goodgis, your art is more like structured, like with your vector stuff and how it has like affected your pixel art. While like Reece, I think your art is more like, it looks more like hand drawn, like I guess like free, what's it called, like freehand, which is cool.
It's like painterly kind of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think the amazing thing about art in general is just how many variations. You could have 100 people doing the same style of like thick line, using 2-point, line, always using the same colors and stuff like that. And you'll still get a variation in a style on it because people find a way to kind of express themselves. So, yeah, it's definitely exciting to try new things and, develop your art style even more.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'll go into my question now, which is specifically like with game development. What is one thing that you always do to make your games look better? Like some kind of like go-to technique.
Jack.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Post-processing. Honestly, like, at least for me, having to deal with like lighting and things like that in 3D, post-processing can make such a big difference to a game. Like whether it be just like bloom or some lens effects, like having all of that done for you on top of your initial art. So you build up this level and then you sort of add these effects on top to sort of like increase the saturation or shift the hue or whatever. It can make the environment feel so much different. Even if you just added like a orange overlay, it's going to make it feel much more like a autumn morning than like a light blue overlay, right?
Yeah, I feel like post-processing, it's like a cool way to make your art like it can be any type of art, and like adding post-processing can make it like stand out. Like say you have like pixel art and you put like a shader on it, it'll like instantly look different from like all the other like pixel art games.
It's literally like the Instagram filter of game dev. It's like I do think that's like, it's nice to have something that just kind of spices up your artwork a little bit,
Yeah, for sure. So, Mark,
you know what?
Like, what's that itch? What's that thing that you need to do, make your games beautiful?
I think it's just, first of all, you got to have these juicy, colorful, pops of color. I like bright, saturated. I like colors that you want to eat. That sounds really weird. I like fruity, bright colors because they just really just catch your eye. I think color is probably the number one most important thing that I play around with and mess with. If it's a 3D game, upscaling to make it look like a Nintendo 64 game or a PlayStation 1 game, I feel like that's great because if you pair that with low poly, it actually looks like a Nintendo 64 game. And I grew up in that genre, so that like it's one of those things that you don't see a whole lot of like Nintendo 64 style games. You see a lot of like NES style games or Super Nintendo games, or like. But when it comes to 3D, there's not really a whole lot of people don't do throwbacks as much.
Oh, there's not. And I think that your game looks amazing. Like it looks like exactly like a Nintendo 64 game. Blizzard Blowout. As if you haven't played Blizzard Blowout 64, go play that. Oh my god, that game is so polished and clean, but it literally looks like like a Donkey Kong 64 reskin, like it's straight out of the Nintendo 64. And I don't think that that's been explored enough at all.
I appreciate it. That's a kind of like a dream as a kid when I was playing the Nintendo 64. I'm like, man, what if I could make a game like that? And so being able to make something in that art style is really cool. So I would have to say, for 3D upscaling and for 2D stuff, it's always just like getting those juicy colors.
Yeah, and it's cool with
Jacob. What about you?
With Blizzard Blowout, how you didn't let tryharding ruin that game. Okay, anyway,
Wow.
So for me, I would say it's like squash and like stretch, like animations. Like it's such like an easy way to just make anything look better. Like you can combine it with other like frame by frame animations. It just makes it look so much nicer than it really is. It's like covering up your bad art by making it like bouncy. I think indie games need more, or games in general need more bounce.
I completely agree.
And stretch.
I think the problem, one problem I notice is I see some people do it and they do it wrong. Like they don't understand how it works. Like they make it when it hits the ground, like they're tall, and then when they jump, they're wide. Right. It's like, wait, what? But yeah, that's like an easy way, like just rotating your guy or squash and stretch. It makes everything look so juicy.
Yeah, studying animation is super important.
That's one thing I miss about Unity. Also, like post-processing, like Barji was talking about, but like when I'm making games with like other like frameworks and things, it's kind of a hassle, and I usually just don't do it, and it makes my games look worse.
So I guess for me, like, and I would definitely say, like, I was going to say color is very important, especially in something like pixel art. And I still think that's very important. I have like a specific color palette for my game. I think that if you're, especially, for making video games, you need to have a consistent art style, at least in something like pixel art.
For everything you need to have
reusing
art style.
Sorry, color palette. Sorry, not art style, but color palette. But I guess if I were to say something different, I would probably say like what's it called, like form. I try to. This game isn't the best example. Like Monster Tribe's not the best example, but for most of my pixel art, I try to always have things very like, almost like isometric, I guess, where it's actually out. It's not like a flat image. I try to, with like highlights and shadows, I try to like bring out that depth, the drawing. So yeah, I guess that's for me, is just like getting into form and making my art like pop, like look 3D, which is cool because I don't like Mark, obviously you do that, but I think that your stuff's a lot more like almost like this like flat, especially like something like Dewdrop Dynasty. It's like a very flat art style. I think it's really cool, as we were saying, like you can have the same art style, but it's also way different. So
yeah, like using the same techniques in different ways. Like what you were saying about like shadows, I kind of do that too, but like not really. I add like drop shadows sometimes to my stuff to just make it look like somewhat better. And yeah, it's like similar, just applied pretty differently.
Yeah, I think it's just adding like lots of little effects to things. Like they add up over time. Like if you just have a flat image and you add, a drop shadow, maybe some inner glow or whatever, like give it a stroke, loads of stuff. Like it can really make a completely different image out of that, right?
it's probably
Sure,
easy to
yeah.
get like carried away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is like you kind of develop your art style based off of the genre of game too. Like you're mentioning like how you mess with more dimension, and it's because you're making a top-down game. And it's cool how like I don't know why I'm just really drawn to like side scrollers, and even the MMOs I made were side scrollers. And it really does change because if you're making something from like a side view profile all the time, versus a 3/4 view top down or whatever,
Right.
you really have to learn kind of a different style to do that. So it'd actually be fun to kind of challenge yourself. And speaking of challenging yourself, that's actually my next question for you guys. Is
Damn,
what's like an
segue.
art style that you want to what's an art style that you want to try, but that you haven't? And let's start with Jacob.
Oh boy. So earlier you were talking about like the idea of making like perfect art and how you can do that with like the tools you use. And I think I want to do that with my art, but my art isn't actually right now. It's not vector art. I don't use Illustrator or anything. I just use GIMP, which is kind of scuffed. Like I'll just like make like circles. And it's like I'm trying to make my art look like vector art, but like I think if I were to actually use like proper tool like Illustrator, I could have like more types of curves. I can make like I feel like it's perfect for my art style, like a tool like Illustrator. So I definitely want to learn Illustrator, basically is what I'm getting at. And I feel like oh wait, go ahead.
I think you'd be like fantastic with Illustrator. And if you don't want to pay the outrageous $60 or whatever it is, $30 a month, there's Affinity Designer is a fantastic alternative. It's like $50 one-time payment, but they're always going on sale. It's literally better than Illustrator. Like I'm
Yeah,
switching
yeah.
over, and they're identical. But I really think your art style would translate so well to vector.
Yeah, I
because
feel like
you're
it's literally perfect. It's weird that I'm not using like a vector program.
yeah, it's insane. You're only making it harder on yourself.
Yeah. Also, another
Affinity
thing for
art
me
style, please
is
sponsor
like
us, apparently.
oh yeah, for sure. Another thing for me is like 3D. Like I want to learn something like Blender because I feel like I'm put off from making 3D games because I know they're gonna look ugly. So
Yeah.
it'd be cool to like learn Blender. That's why it was cool when I made a game with Jack because Jack is like pretty good at making 3D models. And that was my first time making like a proper 3D game. And it was a lot of fun, like the coding side of things. But like right now, I just don't think my art is there to make a decent looking game.
Yeah, I would agree. I was gonna say 3D modeling was mine. But specifically like more like cartoony modeling.
You're thinking like toon
I don't know if
shading.
it's like like a toon a
Ooh.
toon shading, like kind of like I don't know, like low poly Zelda Wind Waker, I guess.
Oh yeah,
It's like
yeah.
the best way
that
to
game is so
describe it.
clean.
So yeah, I would
Or
love
isn't that
to
like
learn
Risk of
3D.
Rain is what kind of what you're saying?
Kind of, yeah, but more cartoony, more like bubbly colors,
that-
like
yeah.
saturated out colors,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Wind Waker is like my dream art style. I would love to make a game in that
Yeah.
style.
Oh god, that would be
Oh
so
heck yeah!
nice.
It looks so good still to this day. It shows you that like having something stylized
Mm.
is, and not just trying
Yeah.
to always go for something realistic is kind of it's not always the way to go. It depends on the game that you're trying to make, but
Yeah, but it can always
know-
it'll always hold up. It's always like
Yeah,
modernized, I guess. Like its own.
they kind of scuffed
thing.
it with the Wii U remaster though, because they added a lot of bloom.
Yeah, blue.
it doesn't look too bad, but
Yeah,
Reece,
it
so I
still
was
looks
gonna
nice.
ask you, Reece, like, are there any other like 2D art styles that you'd be interested in trying? Like even with pixel art, is there anything that you want to like kind of dive into that you haven't really explored too much?
I mean, I think there's still a far journey for me to go in pixel art itself. I really want to get better at animation. Like, I started doing animations recently, and I'm getting better, but it's like it's a whole different beast. It's not just drawing more pictures of things. It's like actually understanding how to interpret, somebody walking or a jump or, so definitely like animation in pixel art. It's just really like isometric pixel art. So getting better at isometric pixel art would be dope.
Oh, yeah, that's like I
Yeah.
think one of the trickiest things to get right.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
then you're literally faking like 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
It's actually way easier than you think. Just like because it's all based on math. And
Yeah.
so if you just do the formulas, it's super easy.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
I think a great example of that is BW Dev's game Lumber Mill. Like that looks so clean,
right.
Yeah.
and that's
Oh,
using
yeah,
like
yeah.
the pixel art isometric style. But somehow everything he draws just looks almost like a 3D model with like a pixelate filter on it. It looks really clean.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
very
my
nice.
god. Okay, final comment. Short Hike, that game, that's the art style. That is it.
Yes.
That's what I want.
Yeah, yeah.
Short
Is,
hike.
a
What's that?
Short Hike.
I love that
my
art, too.
God. But yeah, that's my dream art style, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
That's
think
like
after
basically what
Monster
I do.
Drive.
It's just the upscaling, like the Nintendo DS or the Nintendo 64 kind of low poly upscaling. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
So what
Definitely-
about
definitely mess
Jack
around with that?
style? What kind of art style would you
Um,
want to learn, man?
I mean, I'd like to say something 2D, but I don't know. I just don't particularly enjoy it. For at least for game development. So I'd probably have to say like sculpting, kind of like what Yele Vermondere, is that his name, does on like his
Yeah,
channel,
yeah.
where the models are much more like curved and sculpting. I guess kind of sort of like Nintendo's models, where it's a lot less low poly and more I
Yeah.
don't know, bubbly, I guess. Yeah,
I would love
Yeah,
to learn
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
too. He made a pretty good tutorial on making a character in that art style.
Oh, really? I'll have to take a look.
Yeah. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to.
It's crazy.
Jack's googling it right now.
It's crazy, like Nintendo styles. Like they have these like ball characters. They're so simple, but they probably have like a bajillion polys in it because it's like
Yeah.
in the textures, like they have like the pore details
So
on like
smooth.
their face and stuff like that, and it's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
so weird. It's cool though.
Yeah.
So
What
like
about you,
if
Mark?
you were to try something new, Jack,
Yeah.
like in 2D, what would it be? Like if you, at gunpoint,
Ugh. Nah.
like Reece is standing here with a gun, and he says, "You need to make something." And it doesn't have to be good, but just something you'd be like, you know what, that'd be interesting to try.
I can tell you, it's definitely not pixel art. I mean that.
Okay.
I'm not a fan. I like the look of it. I'm just not very good at it. I'm really not very good at pixel art. It's always just trying to make things look 3D. I can't do it. Like if I'm trying to make a character.
Like if you could like wake up one morning and you like know how to do this art style, like what? kind of art
okay,
style would that be?
okay.
If you don't have to
Um,
go through the learning process, basically.
Man, if I could make like really good vector art, it would probably be that.
That's clean. Okay, but if like that was me, then it would just be like super like nice looking 3D models. Like,
Yeah.
could you imagine?
Could you- I can't.
Like,
no, I'm just
imagine
kidding.
just being good, like at making like crazy 3D models, like putting them in your thumbnails, man.
Like those Blender what? I used to watch those like these like Blender showcases or whatever where they would like show like the best things that you can make in the software or whatever. And
Yeah.
people were just like absolutely killing it, like college students and stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's
and they're
crazy.
with like dragons that are like straight out of Skyrim or better, you know?
Honestly,
That would be pretty dope.
I have to
but,
say,
you know,
Blender is pretty. If you do well with vector, then in my opinion, like Blender is just like Illustrator 2.0 because you just add one more dimension, but you can literally do the
yeah,
exact
that makes
same
sense.
thing. There's actually a really cool indie game called Fish Fly Fever. It's by this company called Froach Club. It's like 3 people, and for the promotional art for it, and I make it sound like they're this big company. They're not. They're just like a couple people working together. For the promotional art, they did all these 3D renders, and they just were like one color, and it was like the most juicy shading. It was bright, saturated on black, and it was like the most basic thing. Like it wasn't anything crazy or at all, but it was so beautiful. I was like, dang, like even just doing something simple as that and like doing renders for your videos would be sweet. I need
Yeah.
Jacob. I need to see your mug bird guy in 3D.
In 3D.
Has to happen.
Oh,
shit.
that's
yeah,
kind of
that would
clean,
be
you know.
amazing.
Oh, bro, you got to do that now.
Yeah.
Somebody has to make that.
Okay, I don't
I
want
mean,
to.
I guess Jack.
I don't want to drop like some pressure right now, but I have a cool idea. Why don't,
Okay, what's up?
for the beginning of the next podcast, why don't we all try the art style that we want to try? Just something, like something small.
Sure.
So Jacob
I mean, I
can make
guess
a
I have
3D.
to now.
Jacob can make a 3D model.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll do it at the end. We'll post it at the end.
yeah.
Yes. or sorry, for the next episode.
Yeah,
we
so-
start with that.
We can start with
Okay,
that. We can
I
we can
get
show
into
what we
that.
make.
That's clean.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be
Alright.
fun.
I accept your challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to our own art styles, then, what are the limitations of your art styles that you guys actually practice?
Well, there's the whole like
Mark?
dimensions
Mark?
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, obviously when I do like pixel art and stuff like that, you do have limitations. Yeah, obviously dimensions a huge part of it, but it is a good question because you can. I don't know. Some art styles are tricky. So like for example, like Dewdrop, there's certain things I want to do like animations, and the rules that I've set up for Dewdrop is that you really can no shading, has to be solid color, and if you have another color next to it, there has to be black pixels in between it. And it gets tricky because like when you're trying to do animations, if you're trying to represent an object, like how do you represent a torch or something basic or something more complicated with a couple pixels? But you want to be consistent. You don't want to be like having super hyper detailed like item that you pick up, but then your character is like 20 pixels total. So I think for the main thing for pixel art is just like it's finding limitations. You're trying to make this illusion because pixels aren't, even a photograph. If you take a photograph, put it on a screen, you're not looking at a land, like say it's a landscape of the ocean. You're not actually looking at the ocean. You're looking at a bunch of pixels that try to mimic what the ocean looks like when you were there. So like when you're trying to do pixel art, you're just trying to do this illusion. And depending on your style, and like I said with Dewdrop, depending on what you do, it can be really frustrating and hard because you're like, how do I make this work? How do I make 5 pixels look like a bear dancing? Like it's just crazy.
Yeah, like I
So-
feel like art styles kind of come from limitations, so like keeping within the constraints you set up is hard, but like it pays off, I guess.
Sure. So do
For
you guys
sure.
have any, restrictions that you would use, like or like guidelines, I guess I should say. Like what are your kind of like rules, I guess, like as I was talking about at the beginning, like you guys have like these set rules that you follow for your art to stay consistent.
So my first game was like a pixel art game, and one thing I did because I like knew that like the art could get pretty bad pretty easily. So one thing I did, I decided to go for like this Game Boy aesthetic. I just used like 2 colors, and I like don't know how to do pixel art, but I think it ended up looking like kind of decent, just because of that restriction.
Yeah, I think
Do you have
like
any like rules for that cartoony look? For like I don't know, man. It always looks this like very similar style.
Yeah,
which
I
is
think,
really I mean that's very important.
Yeah, I think like
It's always
definitely colors. Like sometimes I'll just stick to like white and black. Like a lot of my games definitely have like a grayscale look, like that cursor game.
yeah, with like one like color.
Yeah,
with
I
that
made one
coffee
game.
line.
Yeah, that too. And then I made one game where I only used black and white, and then I used like primary colors, which actually ended up being kind of bad because you needed to like distinguish between the primary colors to play the game. So people who were colorblind like couldn't play the game. But,
wow.
Yeah, accessibility in art is another thing you should
Yeah,
keep in
it's a whole
mind.
other thing.
Don't make my mistake.
No.
Yeah, I think colors like
Technically.
that is like a prime thing because like you can establish a palette. You could always use like warm tones.
Yeah.
Just think about color temperature. It plays a big role. Like I don't know if you guys have noticed this because if you did, I would be shocked because it's really nerdy. But a lot of my designs have a very cool tone to it because I tend to like cool colors. That doesn't mean I don't use greens. All my greens are just cool greens. All my reds are cool greens. It's like a pinkish red instead of an actual warm
Yeah.
red.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of part of it. And I also think it depends on the game. So you establish your art style. Like you're making, like for Blizzard Blowout, I was making a 3D game. I knew I had to be under a certain amount of polygons to make it fit with the rest of the game. I knew I had to use these certain colors, to match all the models together. So I really feel like a lot of art styles aren't necessarily and they're kind of like you have your art style, but I that carries over, but each game has its own set of rules that you set up in order to make it feel consistent.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse
Yeah.
than having like vector art with pixel art, a 3D
Oh,
model,
God.
all different colors. You can make it work. Like there's a game like Knuckle Sandwich, which mixes 3D with 2D, and it looks gorgeous. Like, but you have to. They use color, they use the design, and even the the shapes and stuff to make it look really nice.
I feel like you can make anything look good if you're just consistent, like consistent with colors, consistent with like dimensions, things like that.
Yeah.
They literally teach you that in art school. Like, if you're bad at something, that's okay. Just consistently be bad, and you create your own art style. Instead of people being like, "Oh, you made one bad piece." Like, if all your pieces are that way, and that sounds like kind of funny, but if you're consistent, you're not just being bad anymore. It's actually a style.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing that instantly stands out. Like if you see a game on Steam, if like the art just is inconsistent, like you instantly just kind of get like the vibe that like it's like not the most like polished thing, I guess.
Yeah, to kind of expand that, my most recent game, the grappling hook one, it was the first game where I actually set down a color palette to follow, and I definitely think that paid off in terms of a lot of the games in the past. I'd literally just pick the colors from the color wheel and be like, yeah, that works, that works. But they kind of just have like a sort of basic vibe to them. But actually having the color palette there and restricting it to that makes the game, in my opinion, look so much better. Even though I have less colors to choose from, it's consistent, and I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's one thing everyone should do. Like just pick a color palette when you start a game and just stick to it.
Yeah, I think if you want your games to look pretty sharp and not amateur hour, like, and if you're bad at color, don't even try to make a palette. Go online, find some palettes. There's literally bajillion palettes out there. Or find a game that you like and copy its palette. Like, as long as you're not making the exact same game, the exact same thing. Like, or like find, if you like a sweater that you wear, copy that palette. Like, you can literally copy any palette that you like. There's no copyright on colors unless it's Coca-Cola red or something. I don't know. Like, but because that'll make your art. It doesn't matter what you're doing, 3D, 2D, 1D. It's gonna make your stuff look better. Is having some consistency.
That's honestly so cool, picking color palettes from things like in real life or other games. I never thought about that. I normally will just go to one of those websites where you just find like 4 different colors.
Yeah, same.
That's generally what I try to do. I try to go out in nature. If I like it, if it could be flowers, you take a photo of it. Or if you find an image of a guy eating a burger and you just really like the colors, like save it.
That's awesome.
Goodgis walking around taking pictures of random people.
Excuse me, sir. Do you mind if I photograph you? I need a color palette for my new indie game on Steam.
In Ohio, you don't need permission to take a photo of someone in public. So,
Oh God.
just saying. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that, but I think like that, doing that, and also if you like stuff, a friend of mine, a fellow graphic designer, he told me like if you want to get better at art and colors and all this stuff, find inspiration, find things that inspire you. Right click, hit save as, save image, put it in a folder, and just do it every single time. Or on your phone, take a screenshot. I literally have thousands of photos on my desktop in folders just so I can look back at reference.
That's
and
such a
I
good
can't
idea.
tell you how inspired you. You'll get so inspired. You'll be like, oh, I want to try this art style. I want to do this. And then you have reference on how to do it as well. So and maybe even if it has nothing to do with pixel art or anything, just like try to capture things that inspire you. It could be like a cute little skunk or something like a picture of a skunk. If that inspires you, save it. I know that sounds weird, but those things will actually help not only with the art style down the road, but also with like the charm and kind of the atmosphere you create in your games.
I imagine that's such a good way to come up with game ideas as well. Is just if you have all those things there, and I don't know, you've got a picture of a bridge saved or whatever, you see the bridge and it'll just like inspire. I guess you've got so much reference to look through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
actually really smart.
Ever since I've done it, I feel like my work has gotten way better, and I feel like it's just cool going. You go back and it just makes you happy. Like like it's normally you scroll on social media and you get stressed or disgusted or whatever. Like, but you go through your inspiration and you're just like, pictures of skunks. No, I'm kidding. I don't know why I picked that.
Nice.
All right.
God.
I think all of us have to make our own inspiration folders now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so too. I think that on the next stream we should lurk Goodgis's. We should leak it in the folder.
Hey, Hey,
We'll
I
start a
should do mine, Reece.
Patreon. Yeah, I know. I saw yours. I know. I feel deeply connected to you, man.
You should make that a Patreon.
I feel like we're
reward.
brothers at this point. But,
A
yeah, so
Patreon
we're gonna
reward
start a
will be my mood
Patreon.
board.
Yeah, we're gonna start a Patreon, and then we'll leak Goodgis's, his folder, inspiration folder.
Or just join mine.
Copyright.
There you go.
Or on Goodgis.
Or just
Well,
take
I feel
screenshots of his
inspired.
game and then like secondhand steal his inspiration.
Oh
True.
gosh.
True.
Created a game
Hey,
with Goodgis's
fair.
inspiration. Copyright.
There you go, man.
8 million views. Dang.
All right. I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
So all of us are gonna try and
Sounds
make our art styles, are we? We're just gonna the ones we want to do. So Goodgis, what do you want
Oh
to make?
boy.
Good God.
I don't know. I don't think I actually said it. I think
Oh,
it
we
would
missed it.
be like making a game in like vector art. It's funny. I do it for a living, but I don't make games in it at all. So that I think that would be a fun challenge.
Oh, wait, are we making a
whip up
game?
something in some kind of tune?
I think I'm
Oh,
gonna download
absolutely not.
Illustrator. Oh, I actually have Illustrator. There's also I know Affinity, but I have Creative Cloud, so I might just download Illustrator.
Oh yeah. Okay. If you're a
Try to-
Creative Cloud, then definitely.
Yeah.
we'll go.
Everyone
even
just get a
use Creative Cloud,
screenshot.
I'm, like,
just
so
get one
stupid.
piece.
Yeah, I think an
Like,
image.
I
Like
use
one
GIMP.
piece of art. Like
Let's
Yeah,
go for
I
an
use
art
GIMP.
style that we haven't
I use
used.
Vegas to edit my videos. Yet I have the Creative Cloud.
Yeah, I
I'm-
can't
I'm
get behind
dumb.
that. Can't get behind
Yeah,
I'm
that.
that-
actually dumb. I'm sorry.
Premiere after. I'm not a big Adobe fan, but Premiere and Illustrator are pretty solid.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's just hard to make the switch.
All right, so Goodgis, if we're making like an image, just a single image for next week of something that you've never tried before, or you've not tried much, what are you making?
I think I'll probably just do a mock-up of like a scene from like a little game and some vector art because I think
Okay.
it'd be so cool. Take what I have and throw it together and see what I can come up with.
All right, cool. What about you, Jacob?
I kind of want to try to remake my profile picture. I feel like it's long
Ooh, okay.
overdue.
What, in Illustrator?
fair enough.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
I mean,
That'd be sweet.
ideally.
Oh God,
Reese?
stuff. I'm gonna say some kind of like Toon 3D. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
Yo. 3D Reece Geofroy character.
Yeah, that would be
Absolutely
clean.
not,
That'd be
absolutely
clean.
not.
3D mustache, man.
What mustache?
The mustache.
What mustache, Goodgis?
Yeah, Reece doesn't have a mustache.
talking
What
What are you talking about, bro?
That's
I didn't say
Oh my
mustache.
God.
That's kind of weird, bro.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah, Jack, what would you do?
yeah, I'm
What
gonna
would you
do like a sculpted model, and I kind of want to do like a little walking animation or something. Try and make it juicy.
Luck with
That's
that,
sick.
dude. Except, guys, we're actually pretty dumb. So for our viewers, this is a podcast. So if you want to see that, I guess check out the YouTube video because.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah.
On,
So
audio.
Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm sure we'll be posting it on there.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great way
Yes,
to kind of
sir,
stay
yeah.
updated
we'll,
with
we'll
us.
post
as
it
well.
on Twitter. Sure.
Um,
On the day of the launch, we'll post it on Twitter or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
all right.
But
Also, if you guys have any questions, now that we're kind of an established podcast, because last time we really didn't have any idea. No one had any idea we were even releasing the video. So, but now that
now we're famous.
now we're famous and we have 400 subscribers, not to flex. Leave some comments down below, and we're gonna pick a comment at the beginning of every podcast and just go over it. So if you have something cool you want to say, or you have a question or anything like that, then leave it down in the comment, and we'll pick one next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
thank you
it
guys
was
so much
nice
for your
talking,
support
boys.
on the first one.
You too, man.
Yeah. Have a good
Wow.
one.
Times, guys.
See you
Crash
next,
Boys
Have
out.
a good one.
See you next week, boys.
Bye.